Hello everyone, welcome back to Smart Contract Labs. In today's lecture, we are going to talk about the escrow services. So what is escrow services and how we are going to design it in smart contract using Remix IDE? Let's see. Yes. So decentralized escrow services. Escrow services are basically a financial arrangement where a third party holds and regulates payment of funds or assets between the two parties involved in a transaction. That means it is acting as a third party that store all the amount of the buyer and the seller, you can say, and whenever the certain condition met, then that amount will be transferred to the seller. And it depends upon the predefined conditions. Escrow services are commonly used in various types of transaction, includes in real estate transaction, business acquisitions, and online purchases. So this is how we can think of escrow services and what are the different things or different functionality we can consider when we design this in the form of smart contract. So first is what are the different entities involved in it. So as you can see in this, I have listed the features of that we are going to design escrow services in the form of smart contract. The first one, we have three entities here: buyer, seller, and arbiter. So buyer is responsible for deposit the certain amount of funds in this decentralized escrow services, and then seller release the use the function called release funds and to transfer the amount that we stored in this escrow services to its address, and then arbiter is responsible for use the function called as refund funds in case of any dispute between the buyer and the seller. So this is how all these three entities work in this decentralized escrow services. And we need to design one in status modifier, because in this we have three status of escrow. First one is created, and the it is created in the initially, and whenever the buyer transfer the fund to this system, and then released when the seller transfer the funds to its account, and refunded whenever the function is get refund function will be used by the arbiter for transferring the amount back to the buyer, right? These are the uh, three stages of this escrow service, and this status we can ensure by using this in status modifier. And we have three more functions. So first one is release fund, that should be called by the seller, that allow the seller to release the fund held in escrow to themselves. And then refund funds allow the buyer and the arbiter to refund the funds held in back to the buyer, or only the arbiter can also do this or to execute this function in case of the dispute between the buyer and the seller. And this function is give you the information about the balance of the contract. And get escrow status, with the help of this we can check what is the current status of this escrow. So this is how what we are going to design in this smart contract. So let's open the Remix IDE, and you can open this Remix IDE by just typing on Google Remix ID Ethereum and just click on the very first list, and this is the dashboard. And what we can do, we just go to the smart contract lab folder, and here we create a new file and name it as escrow service. Right now, before we start designing the contract, first we need to specify the license identifier and the compiler version. So let's take any other default code file, and just copy these two information into your file. Right, so first one is your license identifier. Let's specify that this is the license identifier we are going to use in this code. And here we are using the compiler version as 0.2.24. That is your latest compiler version. And how you can specify the compiler version? By using the pragma keyword and solidity, and here we have a caret sign that with the help of which we can we can specify the compiler version. Right, now next task is to create a contract. For creating a contract, we have a contract keyword and just give the name of this contract as escrow and just define its scope. Now, whenever we create a contract, let me zoom it little bit. Yes, when we create a contract, so we always follow a uh, step-by-step procedure, systematic way. First, we always follow a systematic way to design the contract. So first task is to declare all the variables that we need to define our functions, and then we work on the modifiers, that what are the different conditions we need while we are declaring our function or executing our function. And then we will think about the constructor, whether we need a constructor for the initialization of this contract or not, and then we will work on the function. So let's do this step by step. So first task is to declare all the variables. So as you can see, we have three entities here. So for each entity, we will use the address data type and declare them as public. So first one is your buyer, second one is your seller, and third one is your arbiter. Right, so all three entities are done. We have used address to declare all the variables one by one. Now, next one is your amount. It is the amount that is going to transfer or going to be stored in this escrow, and this amount should be transferred by the buyer, because this is like a system. For example, or in online purchases, buyer wants to buy something, and for that product, he wants to submit some amount into the system, and then after the purchasing is done, the amount will be transferred to the seller, right? So this is how it works in the background. Now, as I told you, for this escrow services, we have three stages. First one is created, released, and refunded. So all stages, whenever we have more than one or two categories or options, multiple stages, for that we have enumerator. So let's define this by using this enumerator and name it as escrow status. So for declaring all the stages under it, we have to use the curly braces separated by comma, and each value should be separated by comma. Created, then released, and then last one is refunded. So these are the following stages of this escrow system, right? Next, because we need to store this status in some other variable as well, because I will use this variable to check whether the status of escrow is created or released or refunded to perform certain task. So that's why I have created this creating this uh, a variable called as escrow status, which is of which type? Escrow status type, that is your enumerator, right? So this escrow status can hold the three values, and all the values, so first value is stored on 0 index, second value will store on the 1 index and 2 index. So this is how the enumerator stored its value, and starting from the index 0. Now, next is work on the modifier. Like I told you, there are certain function that should be executed by a particular entity. For example, if you want to execute a deposit function, that function should be executed by the buyer, right? So that's why we need certain modifiers that depicts that yes, this function should be executed by only buyer. Some function should be executed by only seller. So for that, we have a require statement. In the requirement statement, we always specify the condition that we want to check before the rest of the statement of the function will get execute. So first, so this is a global variable message.send. It stored the address um of the executor who is executing that function, right? And it should be equal to the buyer. So message dot sender equal to buyer. That means the condition is perfect. Now you can execute rest of the function statements. But if it is not true, that means we have to display an error message that only the buyer can call this function like this. Right, and we always terminates modifier with the underscore symbol. What does it mean? That this under, because these modifier act as a constraints and conditions on certain functions. So if these conditions satisfy, that you have to execute rest of the statement, that is replaced by these this underscore sign. Right. Similarly, we need to create two more modifiers because we have three entities here. So next modifier is only for seller. Right. So in this as well, we will use the same status message dot sender equal to sailor. If it is true, then it's fine. Otherwise, we have to display the error message. Only the sailor can call this function and just terminate this with the help of underscore. Next, we have a modifier for onlyArbiter. So here we have a required statement, message dot sender equal to arbiter. If it is true, then it is fine. Otherwise, we have to display the error message only the arbiter can function. It's done. Just end this modifier and it's all. All modifiers are done, and so we can also create one modifier for the status of this escrow, because we have three status: created, released, and refunded. So you cannot call the refund functions when you are you cannot call the deposit function when you are refunded, when the status of the escrow is refunded, right? So we can also specify this information in the form of modifier. Let's do this modifier inStatus. And here we just need to pass escrow status. And here we have to pass the status variable, right? And it should be escrow. Oh, it should be of enum type. So E should be capital and S should be capital. Yes, now it's done. Right, now use a required statement and use it as we have a keyword called status, your escrow status. The variable that we have declared should be equal to the status. If it is equal, then all stages are correct. That means it is in a valid escrow state. Otherwise, we have to display error messages invalid escrow status like this. And you will understand more when we'll declare, we'll define different functions, right? So first step is done. We have declared all the variables. Second step is done. We have declared all the conditions that we need for defining our functions. Now, next one, to initialize, to deploy this function with some initial values, right? So for that, we need a constructor. Here I'm creating a parameterized constructor for initializing all these variable buyer, seller, arbiter, and maybe the amount, right? But in the starting, I just want to I want two parameters, one for the for one for seller to to declare what is the address of this seller and the arbiter, right? And now buyer is your message dot sender, who is deploy this contract is your buyer, and next is your seller is the parameter that you are passing. seller, and your arbiter is your arbiter, like this. So this is how you can initialize your three variables. Now next is your escrow status. It should be in the static one. So escrow status should be equal to escrow status dot created, because at the starting in the starting the status should be created. So these are the, I guess these are the following things I need for initializing this contract at the time of deployment, right? And next, so all these things are done, I guess. So let's work on different function one by one and declare them, and think about, you also think about that which modifier we are going to use with which functions. So first function is your release funds. The first, it should be a deposit function as well. So first declare a deposit function and deposit. Only the buyer can call this function. So I'm using this modifier along with this, and this function should be public. And I told you, whenever the payment of certain amount is involved in the definition of the function, so you have to make that function as payable, because here we are depositing certain amount in this escrow system. So that's why it should be the payable one. And so first statement, is here that the amount that we are going to provide in this should be greater than 0. And for storing the amount or amount and the balance and the uh, the the ether amount of ether or v that you want to transfer, we have a global variable called message.value. It is stores all this information, and this should be equal to 0. If it is equal to 0, that means yes, you are depositing certain amount. Otherwise, you have to display error message that deposit amount must be greater than 0. Then, and you just need to update the amount as message dot. You can also initialize amount as 0 initially, right? And the amount is amount plus equal to message dot value, the amount you are transferred. So this is how you are going to transfer or deposit this amount in the smart contract, right? Next, this is done. Now work on next function. So next function is release funds, and this function should be execute by the seller. Only seller can execute this function to transfer the contract amount to his or her own account, right? So and it should be of public type, right? And here, whenever you are releasing the funds, so your status of this escrow should be the created, should be escrow dot, sorry, is escrow status dot created, should be created one. Just cut this and paste here, right? Now it's done. Now now just whenever you are releasing the funds, first we need to change the status of the escrow as released. So just change the status, escrow status is equal to escrow status dot released. So this is the first task we want to do, and the next task is to transfer the amount payable seller, transfer the amount to the seller's account. It's done. Now, next one is refund functions that should be executed by the arbiter for refunding the funds to the buyer. So only arbiter, this function should be public, and your inStatus should be in released should be the created one. Escrow status dot created public, and then next is your require. Oh, sorry. When you are refunding, you just first update the escrow status as escrow status dot refunded, and then transfer the amount to the table buyer dot transfer right. Okay, it should be not release, it's refund. Should be refund funds. We cannot have a two similar type of functions in the same program, right? We can have in the different contracts, and in case of method overriding, right? In case of inheritance. Like next function is to next function get contract refund balance funds and release funds done. So next function is get contract balance. Should be of public type. Sorry, public. And it's a view, because whenever we are not modifying any state variable, that function should be declared as view, because we are just reading it, not writing it. Returns, and here we have uint, because amount is of uint type, and here we will return amount. Right, and next function is to talk about the functions escrow status. So you can also declare this function as function get escrow status, and because here also we are just accessing the information to know about the status of this contract, so it should be of view types. And here we have escrow status. It should be of return the escrow status, right? And here you just return the variable as escrow, the smaller one. Right, all functions are done, and I guess there is no error till now. So let me summarize your this code. So first we have specified two important information. First, the license identifier. Second one, compiler version. Then we have created the escrow contract, and here first we need to initialize all the state variables that we need in our functions. So first three variables specify the address of three entities: buyer, seller, and arbiter. And third one is your amount. The amount is holds the value that is going to be deposited by the buyer. Then we have a escrow status. We have three states. First one is created, release, and refunded. And then we have created one variable that is stored which type of value, the enum type of value, because as you can say, the name is same here. Now, after all declaration of all the variables, our next task is to declare all the modifiers that we need with different functions to apply certain conditions. So first condition that the only buyer suggests that only the buyer can execute that function, only seller can execute that function, and only arbiter can execute this function. Now this is the another modifier we have created to check whether you have escrow is created or not for executing release and refund functions. Now, next task after the conditions we have specified using different modifiers, we have constructor, and in constructor, the address of this who is deploying this contract is going to be a buyer one, and we've passed two parameters, one for the seller and one for the address, both of address type. And we are initializing all the variables, and we have created, we have changed the status of this escrow status as created and amount as 0. Now in deposit function, the buyer depositing certain amount to the contract. Release funds is used by the seller to transfer the deposit amount to the seller account. And funds is used by the arbiter who is the middleman who transferred the refunded amount to the buyer, right? And this is we are transferring. Get contract balance give you the balance, the current balance of the contract, and escrow status is tell you about that. It's the status of this escrow. It's created, released, or refunded, right? So let's compile this first. So it's compile, you can see the green tick here, and now deploy this. Now, whenever you're deploying this, the first one is your buyer's address. Second one I'm taking as a, because whenever you are deploying it, you have to call these constructors and the pass two parameter. First address should be of your seller type. So I'm just copied that address. I have copied the second address as your seller type and third address as your arbiter type. So I'm just, so third address is your arbiter type. And you just deploy this by using this first address, and this is going to be a buyer's address. So and deploy this, it is deployed successfully. Oh, thank God. And just see this. And here we have different variables. All variables that we kept as public is displayed here, the deployed contract. So if you want to check the arbiter address, it's the third one, like we did. This third one is the arbiter address, and buyer address is the address from which we have deployed this contract. And similarly, you can check the amount is 0, right? And get contract balance as 0, right? And status in this is created now. And whenever we are checking, the first is your 0 index, that is your created, and 1 is your released, and 2 is for refunded. Right. So first, what we're doing, we just deposit a certain amount. We are depositing the 9 into this account, and it is successful now. Now you can check the amount value as 9 and get contract values as 9. Right. Now next task is to release the fund, and this should be executed by the seller, which is your second address. So just select this address and use this function as release funds. It's successful now, right? And now if you want to refund that amount to the if you want to refund that amount to the buyer, then the arbiter can do this. So I will select this third address, that is the arbiter's address, and this execute this. The transaction has been reverted to the reason invalid escrow status. Okay. So whenever we are releasing the funds, refunding the funds, it should be not created, it should be released. Because you just you can release the once you transfer the amount to the seller, then only you will ask for the refund. So that's why it should be of the release, not the created one. So that's why it's reverted. Right. So that's all from my side, and I have updated this information. You can execute the same function in your remix ID and check whether it is working or not. Because after saving this, I need to redeploy it. So after redeployment, you can execute all the functions. So that's all from my side. If you want, if you have any questions, any doubts, you just use this comment box and ask me. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.